Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Saturday, March 9th, 2024. This is The Excerpt. Today, Trump's RNC has elected new leadership, plus how Denver is dealing with an influx of migrants, and Liberty University has been hit with a historic fine over its response to sexual assault. Former President Donald Trump's takeover of the Republican National Committee is now complete. RNC members gathered yesterday to elect a new leadership team, including daughter-in-law Laura Trump as co-chair. In praising the GOP's new leaders, outgoing Republican National Chair Ronna McDaniel called for party unity. But the committee did not address a major question of the new Trump takeover, whether RNC money will be used to cover part of Trump's massive legal bills. Another Trump nominee, Michael Whatley, was elected as the committee's national chair. The RNC also formally declared Trump the presumptive presidential nominee. Thousands of migrants have been arriving in Denver in recent months, putting a new strain on the city. I spoke with USA Today national correspondent Trevor Hughes about the people looking for a chance at a better life and possible solutions going forward. Trevor, always good to have you on.
Happy to be here.
So, Trevor, let's just start with this. How many migrants have arrived in Denver recently?
Well, we're looking at somewhere around 40,000 migrants in the past year. Now, that may not seem like a lot in the context of a city, but for Denver, that's a heck of a lot. You know, under normal circumstances, Denver has maybe a population of unhoused people of 1,000 or 2,000. So 40,000 people arriving in the city without shelter or resources or permission to work is just a huge change.
And Trevor, who are these folks? Where are they from? And why did they end up in Denver?
Many of the folks are from Venezuela. And they left South America because Venezuela is a sort of collapsing country. And they made their way something like 3,000 miles up from Venezuela through Panama and all the way up through Mexico to the border with Texas. Most of the folks I've talked to then crossed the border and surrendered to immigration authorities in Texas. And at that point, Texas officials in many cases are giving them bus tickets and sending them to Denver.
So what strain is this now putting on the city?
Border communities like El Paso have been managing immigrants and migrants for generations. Denver is 600 miles from the border. And this influx of migrants, this group of new arrivals, these are folks who have no connection to the community here. It's not like they have an uncle or a friend or a buddy who's going to hire them for a job. These are folks with essentially no means, no connection, and in many cases, no English. That means the city of Denver has spent tens of millions of dollars to provide shelter, food, all kinds of assistance. I mean, people are showing up in t-shirts and flip-flops, and we're talking Denver in the winter. It's well below freezing all of the time, at night at least.
What solutions then are available, Trevor, at the local level? Is this a job for government, or is it for the nonprofits or religious organizations to try and solve?
What we've seen here in Denver is a real collaborative effort between the city government, nonprofits, churches, and just ordinary folks who want to help out. What's odd about Colorado is that many of the cities surrounding Denver have refused to help, explicitly refused to help. The state has been fairly quiet on this, and that's left the mayor of Denver really looking around and saying, where is the federal government? And he's a Democrat, so he's been really pushing the Biden administration to do more, to free up funding, but also to create some sort of national plan to help manage these folks.
You mentioned the federal government. We know President Joe Biden touched on immigration in his State of the Union address this week. How is this issue playing out on the federal level at this point, Trevor, and how big of a factor is it shaping up to be in the election later this year?
Immigration has taken a huge role in this presidential election. You have many conservatives very upset about what they see as a border that is, very porous, that far too many people are coming here without permission. And then they're angry and frustrated about the very slow process by which people are either deemed eligible to remain in this country or sent back to where they came from. President Biden has called for a number of different things, tightening up the border, but also speeding up the process by which people are reviewed to remain here, and also considering whether or not they should be allowed to work, because that's been a big thing. Every person I have talked to, every migrant I have talked to said, I came to America for a chance at a better life. This is a place that speaks to me in terms of hopes and dreams and the opportunity to make life better for my kids. Every one of them wants to work.
Trevor Hughes is a national correspondent with USA Today. Really interesting insight here. Thanks, Trevor.
You bet. Glad to be here.
Liberty University is facing a historic fine over its response to sexual assault on campus. I spoke with USA Today investigative reporter Chris Quintana for more. Chris, thanks for hopping on the excerpt today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's just start here, Chris. What is Liberty being punished for?
So Liberty University is being punished for its failure to comply with the Clery Act. It's a law that requires universities to track crime on their campuses. But it's not just that. It's also to warn students and protect them from danger. And as part of that, there's provisions regarding sexual violence. And so the government, in its investigation, which lasted 2 years, found that Liberty created a culture where students were afraid to report that they've been sexually assaulted. And so there are other findings in there, but much of the report focuses on sexual violence and what the university failed to do to protect its students.
And so, Chris, how steep is the penalty here?
The federal government is going to require Liberty to spend about $2 million on on-campus safety enhancements. They're also fining them $14 million, which is unheard of for a Clery Act investigation. The largest fine we'd seen before that was about $4.5 million, and that was related to the Larry Nassar case in Michigan. To also just give you a sense of where this $14 million figure sits in the landscape of Clery investigations, from 2000 to 2023, the total amount of fines that the government levied for Clery Act investigations was about $20 million. So that $14 million figure really should give you a sense of how big this action is.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do victims, Chris, feel about a financial penalty for this?
It's funny, we're just talking about the size of the penalty compared to previous cases, but Liberty is a very financially stable university, I would say. They get hundreds of millions of dollars in federal financial aid every year. They've got a massive endowment, one of the largest in the country, at just above $2 billion. So, victims feel that they're not sure how much this financial penalty is really going to affect the university. It is heartening for them to see that the university's actions are being brought to light, and not just in a few publications, but kind of across the board.
And are we hearing from Liberty at all in response to this penalty?
Going back to October, Liberty has been suggesting that they were unfairly targeted by the education department. They have said that there were inconsistencies in the reports that USA Today had gotten a hold of before it was published officially earlier this year. But at the same time, they also agreed with many of the government's findings. So it's a little bit of, we feel like we're being unfairly targeted, but we also recognize that we had deficiencies here. I don't know how they're going to respond moving forward, but that is kind of what they've said so far.
And so, Chris, what's this mean for other schools? Does this now set a new precedent?
The way that the federal government has often investigated sexual assault on campuses through Title IX investigations, and the federal government does have the ability to completely cut off federal funding to universities if they're not complying with Title IX. That hasn't happened before. With the Clery Act, they can fine universities. And so there are some observers who are looking at this and are saying, this may be kind of a new way that the government tries to tamp down or address this concern on campuses. And if you look at the statements that government officials gave to us, Richard Cordray, who's the head of the Federal Student Aid Office within the Education Department, said, this is a sign that we're taking seriously the sexual violence provisions in the Clery Act. I also just want to take a quick second to shout out Hannah Dreyfus, who's at the Arizona Republic. She uncovered a lot of the issues that the government raised in its report. And she was working at ProPublica in 2021 as a fellow. And so journalism, the collective work, and just want to make sure that we recognize our colleagues.
Chris Quintana is an investigative reporter for USA Today. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Pentagon, after an extensive probe, says it found no evidence of aliens or extraterrestrial technology on Earth. The findings, sent to Congress as part of a mandated review, mark the most significant rebuttal the Defense Department has issued in response to claims that it is covering up alien visits to our planet. The 63-page report looked into all information available and was designed to take into account an array of potential anomalies, including spy planes and balloons. The report's authors acknowledge that the findings are unlikely to satisfy everyone, especially those in the community of conspiracy theorists and other independent investigators who think any denials are part of the cover-up. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. The Academy Awards are tomorrow, honoring the best of the year in film. Oppenheimer leads nominations with 13 in total, followed by Poor Things with 11 and Killers of the Flower Moon with 10. Late-night host Jimmy Kimmel is back as the event's host, and the show starts an hour earlier this year at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific. You can stay up on all the latest red carpet action and more tomorrow with USA Today's live blog, beginning at noon Eastern. And be sure to stay tuned to The Excerpt tomorrow when my co-host Dana Taylor talks with USA Today sports reporter Tom Shad about the upcoming Paris Olympics. Can organizers get the City of Light ready in time? You can find the episode right here on this feed tomorrow. And a big political week has been put to bed. For those of you looking forward to warmer weather and more daylight, it's right around the corner, and the time change known as Spring Forward happens tomorrow. Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your pods, and if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson, back Monday with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.